The morning sunlight spilled through the studio windows of The View, mixing with the gleam of cameras and the restless buzz of a live audience. The set glowed in its usual cheerful colors, mugs, cue cards, laughter, but beneath the chatter there was always that unpredictable current, the one that made The View infamous. It wasn't just a talk show, it was a battlefield disguised as a brunch table. And today, the guest of honor was Michael J. Fox, actor, author, and living symbol of hope. As the theme music faded, the host smiled into the cameras. Joy Behar shuffled her cue cards. Whoopi Goldberg adjusted her glasses, leaning forward with a practiced grin. Welcome back to The View. Today we have one of my favorite people on earth. You know him, you love him, the one and only Michael J. Fox. The audience roared to life, standing and cheering as Michael walked onto the set. His trademark smile was gentle, genuine, that familiar spark of kindness radiating from his eyes. His movements were measured, careful, his Parkinson's symptoms visible but met with dignity. He greeted Whoopi with a hug, waved to the others, and took his seat. Michael, it's great to see you, Whoopi said warmly. You're one of those rare people who just light up a room. He laughed softly. Thanks, Whoopi. You're the only person who can make me nervous before coffee. The audience chuckled. They began light, talking about his latest book, Always Moving Forward, a reflective memoir about aging, courage, and optimism. Michael's voice carried that same mix of humor and sincerity that had made him beloved for decades. I've had good days and bad days, he said, but I learned a long time ago that you can't wait for the storm to pass, you've got to learn to dance in the rain. Applause filled the studio. Even Joy smiled at that, briefly. For a few minutes, it was the kind of television moment producers loved, touching, inspiring, easy to digest. But The View never stayed safe for long. Joy glanced down at her cue cards, her tone shifting ever so slightly. Michael, she began, you've become this incredible symbol of optimism. You're known for your positive outlook on life, no matter what. But let me ask you, don't you ever get tired of it? Michael blinked, surprised but composed. Tired of being positive? Yeah, Joy continued, leaning forward. I mean, the world's a mess. We're surrounded by bad news. You've got people struggling to pay bills, fighting wars, losing faith in the system. Doesn't it feel a little naive to keep saying everything's going to be okay? The audience went still. The mood had changed. Whoopi glanced at Joy, sensing the pivot, while Sonny Hostin quietly looked down, avoiding eye contact. Michael tilted his head, thinking before answering. Well, he said softly, I don't think optimism is about saying everything's okay. It's about believing that it can be, even if it's not right now. A few people clapped. Joy, however, pressed on. Sure, but for a lot of people, optimism isn't realistic. It's not a choice. Some people don't have the luxury to look on the bright side. The word luxury hung heavy in the air. Michael's smile faded. His hands trembled slightly as he folded them on the table. I understand that, he said, his voice calm but firmer now. But I don't think hope is a luxury. It's not something you buy or inherit. It's something you fight for, every day. The crowd murmured approvingly. Whoopi nodded, that's right, under her breath. But Joy wasn't done. I get that, I do, she said quickly, but don't you think people can hide behind positivity? Pretend things are fine instead of confronting what's wrong. Michael looked at her steadily, his tone still gentle but his eyes sharper. Joy, I've been confronting reality since the day I was diagnosed. Every tremor, every limitation, that's my reality. Choosing hope doesn't mean ignoring pain. It means refusing to let it own me. A wave of applause broke out, genuine, heartfelt. The kind of response that comes when truth is spoken plainly. Joy pursed her lips, uncomfortable. She shuffled her cards, glancing briefly toward the producers off camera. That's one way to look at it, she said coolly. Michael's lips curled in a half smile. It's the only way that's kept me standing, he replied. Whoopi chuckled, trying to lighten the tension. See, that's why I love this man, she said, patting Michael's arm. He's got more grace in his pinky than most of us got in a year. The audience laughed, grateful for the release, but the energy between Joy and Michael remained taut, stretched thin but unbroken. As they moved into the next segment, the questions about his book returned, but the warmth in the room had changed. Joy stayed quiet, listening but occasionally smirking at something unsaid. Michael answered with poise, yet his eyes carried the faint flicker of someone who had just been tested. When the cameras cut to commercial, the audience began to clap again. The applause was loud, but behind it, the tension lingered, invisible to viewers at home but heavy to everyone in the studio. Michael leaned back in his chair, still smiling faintly. Joy sipped from her mug, pretending to review her notes. For a brief second, their eyes met, not hostile, not friendly, but full of a silent challenge. Whoopi, sensing it, sighed under her breath. "Oh Lord," she muttered, half to herself. "Here we go again." The red light above the camera blinked on. The next segment was about to begin. But in the air, just beneath the practiced smiles, something was cracking. The morning had started with laughter. It wouldn't end that way. When the show returned from the break, the applause sounded a little too forced, a little too eager to cover the tension that still lingered. Joy Behar smiled at the camera, but her eyes flicked briefly toward Michael J. Fox, who sat with his hands folded, polite but guarded. The studio air felt heavier now, the chatter subdued. Everyone, the co-hosts, the audience, even the crew, could sense the quiet friction beneath the table. Whoopi Goldberg tried to reset the mood. "Welcome back to The View. We're still here with the amazing Michael J. Fox," she said, forcing a cheerful tone. "We were just talking about his new book and his incredible message about staying hopeful through life's toughest moments." Michael smiled and nodded. "That's right," he said. "You can't control the circumstances, but you can control how you face them. That's where your power is." The audience clapped again, a little more naturally this time. For a second, it looked like the segment might recover. But Joy wasn't finished. She leaned forward, setting down her cue cards. "Michael, you talk about personal power and positivity," she began, "but don't you ever worry that kind of thinking lets people off the hook? Like, if we just say, stay hopeful, aren't we ignoring the bigger issues? The real pain people are facing?" Michael's face softened, but his eyes hardened a little. "No," he said slowly. "Because hope isn't ignoring pain. It's walking through it without losing yourself." Joy tilted her head, unimpressed. "But that sounds easy coming from someone like you," she said. "You're successful, loved, admired. Most people don't have that kind of support system. They can't just will their problems away." The room fell quiet. A few people in the audience shifted uncomfortably. Michael exhaled, his voice still calm but edged now. "Joy, I've spent half my life losing things I couldn't control. My health, my balance, my independence. If you think I've been able to will any of that away, you haven't been listening." Whoopi murmured, nodding in agreement, but Joy didn't stop. "I'm not saying that," she replied, hands gesturing. "I'm just saying there's a difference between realism and optimism. Sometimes being too positive can sound tone deaf." Michael gave a small, incredulous laugh. "Tone deaf," he repeated, shaking his head. "I've been told a lot of things, Joy, stubborn, idealistic, lucky, but tone deaf isn't one of them. You don't survive this long by pretending everything's fine. You survive by believing something better is possible." Applause broke out again. The audience was firmly on his side now. Joy's smile faltered, her face tightening. "Okay, but let's be honest," she said. "You make it sound simple. Not everyone can just flip a switch and be hopeful. Maybe it's unfair to expect people to." Michael leaned forward slightly, his voice low but steady. "I never said it was simple. I said it was necessary. You talk about realism, but what's more real than the human capacity to endure? Hope doesn't erase pain. It gives it meaning." The audience erupted once more, louder this time. A few people even stood up. Joy forced a smile, but there was irritation behind it. "All right," she said, half joking, "I think you've got the crowd on your side, Michael." He gave a faint smile. "I didn't come here to win a crowd, Joy. I came to talk about my work." That line hit harder than anyone expected. Whoopi raised her eyebrows and let out a small, nervous laugh, trying to ease the tension. "Let's keep it friendly, y'all," she said. But Joy's pride had been pricked. "I'm just asking questions," she said defensively. "And I'm just giving answers," Michael replied evenly. "You don't have to like them." The room went utterly silent. Cameras zoomed in, catching the flicker of frustration on Joy's face. Then, with a faint tremor in his hand, Michael unclipped his microphone. The sound technician, startled, took a step forward. "Michael," Whoopi started, but he held up a hand. "It's fine, Whoopi," he said softly. He turned toward Joy, his tone measured but firm. "You call what I do naive. You think hope is a weakness. But I think cynicism is a luxury people use to feel smarter than everyone else. I don't have time for that. I've got a life to live." The audience gasped. Several people clapped instinctively. Joy looked stunned, her mouth half open, searching for something to say. Michael pushed his chair back and stood, his expression still calm but unyielding. "I came here to talk about a cure, not a debate about whether it's worth trying," he said. "So I think I'm done here." Whoopi stood too, trying to de-escalate. "Michael, come on, sit." But he was already moving toward the edge of the stage, shaking hands with a few audience members as the crowd broke into loud applause. Some cheered, others simply stared, unsure whether they'd just witnessed television history or a complete meltdown. The control room scrambled, the producer's voice echoed through earpieces, "Cut to commercial." Cut to commercial, but the camera kept rolling for a few seconds longer, capturing Joy's stunned face as she tried to recover. "Well," she muttered, forcing a laugh, "I guess he's still got a lot of energy." When the show finally cut to black, the internet exploded. Clips hit social media within minutes. The hashtags multiplied. Hashtag Michael J. Fox, hashtag The View Clash, hashtag Hope v Cynicism. Millions of people weighed in. Some praised Michael for standing up for compassion and refusing to let anyone diminish his optimism. Others accused Joy of badgering a guest who'd earned nothing but respect. By the time the next commercial break ended, the producers had decided not to bring Michael back on. The remaining hosts tried to move on, awkwardly transitioning to a cooking segment that no one was really watching. Backstage, Michael was already in his jacket, greeting crew members politely as he left. His publicist caught up with him, phone buzzing with notifications. "You're trending #1, she said. Michael smiled faintly. "For what?" "For walking off," she said. He paused, his eyes soft but certain. "No," he said, "for standing up." Then he pushed open the studio door and stepped out into the daylight, leaving behind the chaos, the applause, and a debate that the whole world was about to have.